Guys, can you guys hear me right now? You guys hear me? Can you guys? Is audio working? Is audio working? All right, okay, all right. We're up. We are up. All right, guys. All right. So this is going to be the Deadpool and Wolverine spoiler discussion. Right now, we're gonna be talking about the film. If you had not seen the film, which if you're here and you haven't seen the film, I don't know what that says about you as a person that you want this to spoil for you, but you're here anyways. This is all spoiler talk right now. Our like non-spoiler review is up on the channel. I've already put that up. This is gonna be talking about the cameos, stuff I really loved in the film, stuff that I couldn't really talk about in spoiler review, in the non-spoiler review because they're spoilers, and I want people to go see this movie, and I want people to have the experience I did of surprise and like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened. Oh my gosh, this person showed up. Blah blah. And oh my gosh, secret. So let's talk about some of the sequences like that I really loved. I'd have to say, out of all the sequences, there are two sequences that I think tied for my favorite in the film. Uh, the first one, of course, is the opening with the NSYNC song, "Bye Bye Bye." I think that's one of the best Deadpool openings that's ever been done. It was. I thought the job, because Deadpool 1 and 2 had really great openings. The first one, has that iconic song in there. The second one was a Celine Dion song, and then this one was like, what are they gonna do? Well, they upped it by having Ryan Reynolds, uh, killing TVA soldiers with the NSYNC song "Bye Bye Bye" in the background, as well as him also doing the his moves in the middle of the fight to the exact dances that NSYNC would do to the song, which made it even more perfect. And I have to say, my favorite sequence was in the end of the film. The was in the third part, kind of the third part of the film. Uh, and that was this. The sacrifice scene. When Deadpool and Wolverine are about to sacrifice each other to save Deadpool's world, and you see them holding hands. Hugh Jackman, of course, gets his uniform ripped off. You see him shirtless, but that's not the only thing. It's the music they put in. With Madonna's the Madonna song that's been playing the entire time in the film. That's been playing the trailers that they've talked about. Ryan also talked about it's really hard to get them doing that and then going back to the flashbacks of Wolverine saying, "I'm proud to wear this suit. I'm proud to be an X-Men." That right there. Kind of sums up what Wolverine has to accept. Over the entire Fox films. If you look back at the Fox films. With X-Men Origins, Wolverine was never present. He never really wanted to be an X-Men. Kind of like what it was with this Logan, except the other times the X-Men he didn't get the X-Men killed. But still, like in those Fox movies, Wolverine never wanted to be an X-Men. He never wanted to be part of that team. He was saw him. He's either going away to try to figure out his past in X2, or he's not there when Scott Summers dies, or to save Jean Grey. He's never really there to save the X-Men. And this time in the film, he finally accepts, I am an X-Men. I am the X-Men. And that's what I love. That's what I love, that he's finally come to the realization that that's happened. Now, we've talked about my favorite sequences now. Let's move on to what I think you're all here for, the cameos. We're going to go through the cameos right now. So if you don't want to be spoiled, leave right now. Leave right now, and we will not talk about it. Now we're going to move on to we're kind of going to go from my least favorite to my favorite right now. And we're going to start with this. The first one is going to be this. I'm going to share my screen right now. That's right here. Right here. Pyro and Sabretooth. Now, I'm going to try to zoom in a little bit for you guys. I'm going to try to zoom in a little bit. All right. I'm trying to make I'm having some technical difficulties right now. Trying to get this onto the screen. Uh, I'm gonna unshare. It's not going with. Stop sharing. Let's try that again. All right, there we go. There we go. All right. So it's Sabretooth and Pyro. We already knew about these guys, so these are considered cameos. And not just them. The X-Men villains in general. There's there's many villains that appear in this film. So, we have the Tyler Mane Sabretooth right here. Tyler Mane Sabretooth, which does appear in the film. Those cameos, Sabretooth's cameo was very quick. Of course, Wolverine cuts off his head, which leads to a funny joke, which is the head of your queen, Furiosa. And it's funny because Furiosa bombed at the box office and they're making jokes about Mad Max and Furiosa in the film, which I found very, very funny. And Pyro, he has some things to do in the film, but not a lot. Pyro, of course, does not make it through the film as well. And not just them, the other villains, Azazel. I think there's the Angel from X-Ray, not the Winged Angel, but there's a different like person named Angel. Lady Deathstrike was in there. I even think I saw a Psylocke in there. Yeah, guys. So if you're here and you don't know who Psylocke is, Psylocke is a very cool character. I'm a big fan of Psylocke. Always been a really big fan of Psylocke. Let me pull up a good picture of her. You guys see that right here? So yeah, this is Psylocke. Psylocke, I saw briefly in the film, and Psylocke has always been one of my favorite, which I don't think they've ever gone right. Not because that she has the very revealing suit, but because her powers are so interesting. And it was cool, even if it was in the background. I saw a girl, purple hair, who had like pink energy. I'm like, okay, that must be Psylocke. Just a little Easter egg in there. Uh, but yeah, Psylocke, I don't know if I don't see anyone talking about the Psylocke Easter egg as well, because Psylocke, she's seen like a lot of people are talking about it. I'm like, Psylocke is in the movie, which is I kind of freaked out a bit. Like I don't know if you guys did, but seeing Psylocke, that kind of was like, oh my gosh, that is so cool that they put that Easter egg in there. Now, those are like the villains. Now let's move on to like the next one that I think was kind of down there, and that was Happy Hogan. Yeah. So John Favreau's Happy Hogan. Let me pull up Happy's picture right now. All right. So yeah, we got Happy Hogan is in the movie as well. Happy Hogan. And this is kind of an important part, in the film. This kind of like he's there to kind of give us why Wade Wilson wants to save the world. Wade Wilson wants to become an Avenger. And it's kind of a funny thing, they make some jokes about like, oh, Happy, you're not really Avenger, you're more of the Avengers chauffeur, aren't you? And yeah, it's really good dialogue, and I think like this was one of the most, not maybe one of the most like, oh my gosh, cameos movie, but I think it's one of the most important cameos in the film. I say that why it's one of the most important cameos. Is because at the beginning we feel like, oh, Wade just wants to join the Avengers as a joke. He wants to be in the MCU. He doesn't want to be over in the Fox universe with X-Men and all the bags they have. But the real thing is, in Vanessa's eyes, Wade hasn't really contributed anything to society. She's asking, like, what are you going to do with your life? Like, are you going to be Deadpool for the rest of your life? And, and like, he wants something to show her that he can be good, that he can make a difference. And that's why we have this cameo. So I say it's not the total, like, best, like, cameo, the one, like, screaming, jumping out of her seat cameo, but I think it's a cameo that is used perfectly because it is needed for the story they are telling in the film. All right. Next up, the next cameo we can really talk about, which we kind of all saw coming. We teased her in the trailer, and that is Lady Deadpool. Lady Deadpool is in the film, and she is actually played by none other than Blake Lively. They never show her face though. They just show her talking. I'm like, I've seen enough Blake Lively like stuff and interviews with her talking about Ryan Reynolds to know that is Blake Lively's voice. Which I think it was a cool character. I kind of want to see more of the like Deadpool core and Lady Deadpool, because this is always about them. I thought it was a good cameo. Having all the Deadpools in there, because it is a Deadpool movie still, so you can't just have X-Men cameos all over the place in the movie. Uh, but it was very cool to see, and we can talk about the other, Deadpool cameos. There's Kidpool, which I also recently found out, which Kidpool is actually played by Ryan Reynolds' daughter. Yeah, so that was revealed as well. You also had like zombie Headpool in there. You had a cowboy Deadpool. You had like a futuristic Deadpool, and then you had like a bunch of other Deadpools just dressed up like in the normal Deadpool costumes. And we're gonna talk about the Wolverine stuff in this sequence a little bit later when we get up, because that sequence is very much higher in my most loved cameos in the movie. The Wolverine stuff, I'm gonna say like right now, was my favorite parts of the movie, the cameos at least. But yeah, so that's kind of what we can say about the Deadpool. Cool, very cool to see Lady Deadpool and the other variants of Deadpool in the film. And then we'll go on to the next kind of big, uh, not really a cameo, but kind of like a funny like cameo in the film, and that is Nice Pool. Yeah, Nice Pool. I when I first saw this image, like a year ago, they popped up this image on the behind the scenes, like, oh, there's like Ryan Reynolds in like this super cool Deadpool suit, and it's like, okay, that looks cool, but I actually ended up enjoying the character of Nice Pool a whole lot more than I thought I would. The jokes in there. This is he's like a Deadpool who's like super nice. Who doesn't have like the filter that Wade Wilson has. Doesn't like whenever there's a joke or dark moment in his life, he makes a joke. This is a Deadpool who's like very positive. And the thing about him is like he's the only Deadpool who has a pretty face still. And of course, that's where we meet Dogpool as well. Dogpool. I didn't feel like I'd like Dogpool when I saw the trailers. I'm like, okay, there's a dog Deadpool. The Dogpool stuff was great. The Nice Pool stuff was great, and I really enjoyed. That not only did they know that like this people want to see X-Men cameos and maybe other cameos from 20th Century Fox Media stuff, but we also got a whole bunch of Deadpool cameos, and the Deadpool cameos did not overshadow or kind of like what's the word for it? Were like left behind by the other cameos. They were just as strong as all the other ones. And I'm gonna say this: each cameo again served a purpose in the movie. Serves a purpose if that was for a joke that needed to be told, or if that was for a moment for main characters Wolverine and Logan to move on to help their character arcs grow. That's why these cameos were in the movie. It wasn't just like, oh, let's put these random cameos here. Let's put a Colossus from X3 and Days of Future Past here. It's like that wouldn't really make sense. Why? How does that fit into the story that they wanted to tell? And let's move on to our next cameo that I liked, and that is this one right here. We're getting into kind of the major cameos now, the major cameos, and that cameo is this X-23. Yes, X-23. We knew X-23 was in the film. Final trailer confirmed that she was in the film. And I think, I believe this is the same X-23 from Logan, because, there is no other version of her. And, she is Laura, and she does have the sunglasses that she wore in Logan in the film. And yeah, X-23, I think, she kind of, her purpose, I think, was in the film, to kind of get Wolverine is at like a low point in the middle of this movie. He's, just drowning his sorrows, his just drowning everything in booze. He's drinking booze. They made it this hideout. There are some other cameos which we'll talk about in a minute, and it's and X-23 is there, and Deadpool's telling Wolverine in time film like, "Oh, you died in my world saving this girl, X-23," and we kind of have a good moment of closure, I think, for these two characters. They really when they did Logan, they kind of said bye to each other. Logan died, and they kind of like she said thank you, but they never really had that last conversation. And what I kind of got from it was they not only Logan got to realize something, but Laura finally got to have that final talk with her dad. Because basically, like Wolverine is her dad, and I feel like that's who she saw at the end of Logan. That Logan Wolverine was her dad, and that's what I think she saw when she was talking to me. When she says, "You're always the wrong guy." until you weren't, because Logan, at times he can be unpredictable. He can be the guy you don't want. But when the moment comes, he will always step up and fight. And that's what she was trying to tell him, even if you're at your lowest point, you're still going to fight with your friends and the people you care about because that's just who you are. You might act like you not care, but you do. So I thought it was a very good cameo. And she had some moments, she was able to take down Juggernaut, which Juggernaut, again, in the film, not played by Vinnie Jones. It's a different actor, but he's supposed to be the Juggernaut from X3, The Last Stand. So she had some pretty cool moments in there. And then let's move on to the next cameo that I liked, and that one was this. Now, there's only X-Men characters who appeared here, but other type of characters, and that here is one of them. Johnny Storm's Chris Evans is Johnny Storm. Yes, Chris Evans showing up as Johnny Storm. When I kind of knew about this a little bit because there was very much a lot of rumors that Chris Evans was maybe going to pop up in Deadpool and Wolverine, and I was like, okay, Deadpool, he might show up, and then he showed up. Like you hear literally Chris Evans' voices in the background. A lot of people didn't pick up on it, but I know Chris Evans' voice, and I heard it. I'm like, and like Deadpool thinks it's going to be Captain America, and I'm like, it's not going to be Captain America. It's going to be Human Torch, and of course, it was Human Torch, and I was surprised like how much screen time they actually gave Chris Evans in this film. Of course, he does not make it in the film. He gets killed a little bit later after we meet him. But I thought it was still a good cameo. Not one of my favorites because Fantastic Four. Like I like Fantastic Four, but I'm not like the biggest fan of Fantastic Four. Just because I thought those movies were cheesy when I was a kid, and I really got more drawn to the X-Men movies more than the Fantastic Four movies. But really cool, like for us to get another F4 cameo in a Marvel movie. Of course, we got John Krasinski already show up, and now we got Chris Evans and Johnny Storm show up, and also the Fantastic Car makes an appearance as well in the film. So there are some subtle Fantastic Four references in this movie. But overall, there's like a funny moment in the film where like Wade says Johnny said all this stuff about Cassandra Nova, which causes death, and we're like, oh, Wade totally sold him out, and then we get to the end credit scene, and it turns out no, he didn't. Johnny Storm said all this stuff that really, really insulted Cassandra Nova, and that's why he bit the dust in the film. And I love the part of the movie where he says, "Shut it, Johnny." Johnny, no, 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 Johnny. And I love how it's like, I feel like it's so weird calling Chris Evans Johnny Storm because I don't only think of him in the MCU as Captain America Steve Rogers. So Johnny Storm and Captain America are two very different characters. And, he's very much Johnny Storm in the sequence and not Steve Rogers. And then let's move on to my next favorite cameo. This is, we're getting to more the higher up. So we're moving on to our 4, 3, 2, and 1 favorite cameos in the movie. So this is my 4th favorite cameo in Deadpool and Wolverine. And that is this. Elektra. Yes, you heard me right. Elektra, played by Jennifer Gardner from the Daredevil and Elektra movie back in I think 2002 and 2004 when the movie came out. This was a cameo I remember. This was confirmed by Deadline a year ago that they said Jennifer Garner was going to show up in this movie. They didn't say if she was going to be Elektra or not, but we assumed it was going to be Elektra. I liked the cameo. I thought it was very cool. Sean Levy, Ryan Reynolds have a very good relationship with Jennifer Garner because they did the Adam Project with her, and there's a lot of the cameos in this movie were just Ryan Reynolds, asking his friends, "Hey, do you want to be in this movie? I know you played this character. Why don't you come over and just be in my movie?" And they're like, "Okay, yeah, sure." And Jennifer Garner's there. I do think that out of all the cameos, of the big cameos, she was the most underwhelming of the cameos. Especially of the big 4/big 3 of the main underground group cameos. But very cool to see her. She got a cool fight sequence in the film. It kind of felt like she was the leader of the underground, not really Daphne King's Laura. I felt more oh, Elektra seems like more of the leader than Daphne King, which I don't know if she should have been leading. I feel like Elektra would be a lot better than having X-23 lead, in my opinion. But yeah, that was Jennifer Garner. Jennifer Garner as a cameo in Deadpool Wolverine. All right. Now the next nine, my third favorite cameo in the movie. My third favorite cameo in the movie was this one. Yes, this one right here. The, the boy Blade shows up, guys. Blade shows up. Now, I remember a report like a probably a month or two ago saying like, "Oh, Wesley Snipes was talking about Marvel possibly like coming back in the film." Like, okay, that'd be cool. Like, oh, maybe he comes back in Secret Wars or Avengers Doomsday. That was labeled King Dynasty at the time. And then he walks into frame into this movie. I'm like, what the? It was the most. It was one of the most surprising cameos, in my opinion, in the film. And they do make a joke how like Ryan Reynolds' Deadpool's like, I don't really like you. I don't really like you. You know that, right? He's like, I don't really like you either. You know, it's kind of with the beef that they had back when as you see in the picture over inside right here, Ryan Reynolds was in Blade. It was like one of the first big movies he was in, and they had kind of a big scuffle on set, and Wesley Snipes was talking about this. How it had been like 20 years since he had received a call from Ryan Reynolds, and he asked, "Hey, do you want to? Can you possibly come back and play Blade in Deadpool and Wolverine?" He's like, hell yeah, because he said he thought he never played the character again, and he already knew that Marvel's moving ahead with Mahershala Ali, and this gave him a chance to play the character again, a character that I think like really like defines Wesley Snipes as an actor. When I think of Wesley Snipes, I think of Blade. Even though some of those Blade movies weren't the best, the first one I think is a, a, a superhero classic movie. That opening scene, with the blood rave is, I think, iconic. It was really cool, and seeing him like actually get like a really badass suit as well. Not just the trench coat and the swords. He had like a full on Blade costume. It looked like he was straight out of like the Midnight Suns video game, and he looked badass. And he had a cool moment where he was fighting. Was fighting Azazel, using his swords, and then someone shoots at him, and he shoots him, and he goes, pew! And I'm like, oh, that's the classic Blade, shot right there, where it's just like someone hits Blade, he goes, pew! He's like. And I'm like, oh, badass. He was really bad. He had a lot more lines in the movie also than I thought he would. And, that's Blade. Blade showing up. It was really, really, really cool. Let's go. Now, we're going to go into my second favorite cameo in the movie. A cameo that I was hoping that was going to happen. Hoping it was going to happen. Channing Tatum as Gambit. Now, as you guys know, we are living the year of the Gambit. The X-Men 97 reactions on the channel, you guys know that I have loved Gambit in that series. And it was especially emotional when, spoilers, Gambit died in that show. And I was hoping, I had two cameos on my wish list, only two cameos that I really wanted. First was James Marsden's Cyclops, which unfortunately I didn't get in the film, but I'm like, okay. I was a bit disappointed about that because, Cyclops guy, favorite X-Men character. And I'm like, second was Channing Tatum showing up as Gambit. And we got it. And of course, he is in the full Gambit look. You see the images, right here, this is exactly what the costume looked like. And, you had some funny jokes in there saying like Gambit. It's like, oh, I don't even remember where I was from. I don't even remember. And then Ryan Reynolds says to him, he's like, are you sure? Are you sure you're him, or did you just really, really want to be? And I kind of cracked up at that part. That was a really funny joke. The jokes with Gambit were all really funny because Gambit, they're all pulling up to go and fight Cassandra Nova's army, and then they pull up, and Gambit's like, "Oh, look at this! I finally have a time to show the world what I'm all about." They're gonna remember me here. I'm laughing because I'm like, he never got a chance to show off what he can do, and it was a great cameo. It was really great, and it kind of got me thinking, like, damn, I kind of wish I got a Channing Tatum Gambit movie now. Back then, I'm like, ah. Like, I think back then, I remember the announcement of when they made that Gambit movie, and I'm like, oh, Gambit, because I didn't know who Gambit was at the time, The only thing I had known at the time, back in 2015, 2014, at that Comic-Con panel was, oh, that's the guy from X-Men Origins Wolverine. Oh, that's cool. And then I read the comics where I found Gambit. I found him in the old animated show, and then X-Men 97, I became even a bigger fan of Gambit. And I'm like, now, Marvel, you got a pop for Gambit in the film. Does that mean it's possible is it possible that possibly we can get a solo Gambit movie after this multiverse crap? Because my big thing about the X-Men going forward now is I want solo mutant movies. You know, kind of, do a Storm movie. Because there's I think what 20th Century Fox never got a chance to do is not explore the other mutant characters. We really only went into the deep backstory of really Wolverine in the film. Deadpool got his moment with his backstory, but no other X-Men characters really front and center. Because like Gambit has such this rich history. Him being part of a crime syndicate and him kind of being rescued. His relationship with Rogue. You know, I think it could be a really interesting, like kind of like crime, movie that they could do in the Marvel universe, which would be really cool. And I just love like whenever I see more like mainline X-Men characters like showing up, like seeing him talk to Wolverine and Deadpool, I was like, oh, it's so cool. Gambit's on this roster, and second favorite cameo in the movie was Gambit for me. Now let's move on to my favorite cameo or cameos in this movie, and that one is this. I'm pull it up right now, guys. Bam. The mask. Not just the mask, but all of the Wolverine variants we got in the film. Of course, the moment when he puts on this mask in the film was like, this is the most badass superhero costume I've ever seen, because the costume is already great. He's got the sleeves off, and then they have the Like the Prayer song going with Madonna, and he just goes like that. I'm like, ah! I'm like, I literally almost had a heart attack because it's the first time when I saw the mask, I'm like, this is awesome. The most badass costume I've seen. One of the most badass moments in a movie I'd seen in a long, long time. And I loved it. I loved that they gave him the mask. And like that the mask didn't look silly. The mask looked badass, kind of like when you see Batman wearing his mask, I'm like, this is Wolverine. Like I look when as soon as they put on that mask, I'm like, that is Wolverine comics, and the Hugh Jackman looks great in it. He looks absolutely great in it. And he kind of wears it the rest of the third act in the film, which I thought was really, really cool. And of course, there are more X-Men cameos. More so Wolverine cameos. There's this cameo right here, which made me go, what the fuck when I saw it. Henry Cavill shows up as a variant of Wolverine. So what really happens is Deadpool is going to all these other universes, like I said in the non-spoiler, because they need an anchor being in order for his universe to survive. So he goes to try to find a Wolverine to be the new anchor being in his universe. And he comes across Henry Cavill as Wolverine, and he makes a little joke about like, oh, we're going to treat you so much better than those smucks down the street. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that was hilarious. Henry Cavill just showing up in anything is going to make me excited because it's Henry Cavill. I will watch any Henry Cavill project or movie. Doesn't matter what it is. I'll go watch it because I just love him as an actor. So yeah, that was Henry Cavill. He was a very small cameo, but very, very cool. They actually called him the Calverine, not Wolverine, but the Calverine, which was hilarious. And then we jump to another universe where Deadpool, and then we meet this Wolverine, the brown suited Wolverine fighting the Hulk. Now, of course, brown suit Wolverine. I'm not a huge fan of the suit. I think it's an okay suit. I'm more of a fan of the suit, but it was still so cool to see the brown and yellow on Hugh Jackman. It was really, really great to see that. I kind of geeked out, and then it looks behind us and it sees the Hulk, and Deadpool says like, "Wah, wah, wah, wah," he starts complaining, and Hulk just punches him in the tree. I'm like, did I just see the Hulk punch Deadpool into a tree? Huh? I never thought I'd see that in a movie. And I feel like a lot of people don't remember this cameo in the movie because there's so many of them. But I'm like, it was very, very noteworthy for me. And of course, there was also an Old Man Logan cameo in the film. Not the Logan from the Logan movie, but Old Man Logan from the comics, which was really cool to see. And that Wolverine has a super dark past, which is I thought they were gonna go with the main Wolverine in the film, but they didn't. Which I was kind of okay with that because I think that's a really graphic way to go. very more heart wrenching way to go. And I think how they handled, what Wolverine was feeling in the film, they did a really good job with that. Now, the one that made me freak out the most, the one thing that made me freak out the most in this movie, because I was like, I lost my mind when I saw this, I was like, I can't believe they just did that, is this. Age of Apocalypse Wolverine. Yes, you heard me. Age of Apocalypse Wolverine. Now, there's no denying that the Age of Apocalypse story in the comics is one of the most, I think, influential, most well known X Men arcs in X Men history. And of course, we had Days of Future Past, which was kind of like that, and then we also had X Men Apocalypse, which that wasn't really Age of Apocalypse, but just kind of like Apocalypse versus the X Men. But I've always wanted an Age of Apocalypse movie. I've always wanted it because it's such an interesting take on the X Men characters. They are all very 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 different. And you look at Wolverine, he's very different, and him showing up in the film, even for the brief second or even minute he's in the film, made me go, I love it. I loved seeing it. It was my favorite cameo. I was like, oh my gosh, it's Apocalypse Wolverine. Oh, it was amazing. And it's why it's my favorite cameo in the film. So that's why I said in the beginning why I think the best cameos in the movie, in my opinion, were the X Men, were the Wolverine cameos. The Wolverine cameos, in my opinion, were the best cameos. Now, I might go see this movie again. I've already seen this movie 3 times, guys. I've seen it 3 times. That's the most I've seen a movie in a long time. I saw The Way of Water 3 times. Avatar. Saw that 3 times, but I haven't gone back and seen an MCU movie this many times before since Endgame, and it's because this might not be as good as the first Deadpool. It's definitely not as good. It's definitely the funniest, but the thing is, it just puts a smile on my face when I watch this film because I'm just smiling the entire time, being like, this is what I want the movie to be. I came out, I was like, that's what I wanted. Marvel gave me what I wanted. And, I think it's a step in the right direction for Marvel. It's like, okay, we're not going to try to, be different, do things that what we think the fans might like. We want to give them a film they like. This was just honoring the legacy of 20th Century Fox, honoring the legacy of those X-Men movies. And I absolutely loved it because, like I've said in my non-spoiler and before, uh, these X-Men movies, the 20th Century Fox ones, they might not all be great, but the ones that are made me the fan of X-Men that I am today. I remember the first time I watched something X-Men was when I watched that first X-Men movie. And, I was like, oh, I gotta know more about these characters. It's where I found my love for Scott Summers. Scott Summers, one of my favorite Marvel heroes, my favorite X-Men character in X-Men, where I got to see Halle Berry's Storm, Frankie Jensen's Jean Grey, Charles Xavier, played by Patrick Stewart, Hugh Jackman's Wolverine, Ian McKellen's Magneto. Like, these are characters that I think are amazing. And, even if they all didn't make a cameo in the movie, I am fine with the cameos we got. I love the story that they told, and I think the sequences, the third act sequence when Wolverine says "I'm an X-Men" made me shed a tear, guys. The last time I really cried watching a Marvel movie was Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. But before that, I had never cried to a Marvel movie before. This is the second time I've cried watching a Marvel movie because him accepting that was like a 20-year long thing of like him finally accepting that he is an X-Men. He belongs to these people. And I'm excited to see the next incarnation of this character. What's the next person going to bring who plays Wolverine? I'm really excited for the future of X-Men. I think the X-Men is what they should be focusing on at Marvel because I think it's the thing that's getting people to watch Marvel right now. You look at X-Men 97, how much people love that show. And like the response to Wolverine, Deadpool Wolverine, people want to go see X-Men right now because I think also X-Men is more relatable today than it maybe was, and it's that it was as relatable back then. X-Men still deals. They wrote these comics, back in the 90s and 80s, and the problems they talk about in those comics are still relevant today. And I think I love Captain America. I love the Avengers, but my real love for Marvel came from X-Men. And that's why I've seen this movie 3 times because this is just everything I wanted. It's honoring the legacy of these X-Men characters, and it's still being Deadpool. Even I even said it's even more Deadpool than those other Deadpool movies because the jokes are way funny. The opening sequence I think is the best of the franchise. One of the best things I've ever seen in a movie. And of course, our three main awesome cameos in Gambit, Elektra, and Blade just made my day when I saw it. And I think this film is amazing. I don't think it's the best movie ever, but I think that it's a fun summer movie. It is, if you're a Marvel fan or even an X Men fan, you are going to like the film. And I'm glad, that if you guys saw it, if you loved it, because I didn't hear anyone come out of that movie saying, I didn't like the movie. No, everyone I heard saying, I loved the movie. And I'm so glad about that because it kind of feels like now Marvel's back, baby. Marvel is back. But guys, thank you so much for watching my spoiler review, kind of spoiler discussion. I see we did get some comments on the video. Brandon Metro, talking about Psylocke. I love to hear it, Brandon. I love to hear that you're talking about Psylocke, man, because no one else is talking about Psylocke as well. Psylocke's in the movie, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Leave your comments down below. Like the video, subscribe to my channel, and thanks for joining the stream, guys. See you next time.